Wow. Okay, get ready to be impressed. We have not one, not two, but we have three Questbridge recipients who successfully achieved full scholarships into college. I have the hardest workers I've ever seen in my life collectively in this webinar. I'm so impressed with you. Don't tell the rest of the staff at Kweller because you are among my favorites. Okay. I just want to share that these are really power players because you know how to work, how to achieve, you have the discipline, and you have the perseverance. I want to share that I'm so incredibly proud of you, not just for hosting this webinar, you're passing the torch, you're passing knowledge, not just for being first gen Americans going into college, you're creating opportunities for generations to come, not just for your hard work, your tenacity, your mentorship, the lessons that you're teaching. It's just so impressive that you are leading this webinar talking about your journey, applying not only into college, which is truly an achievement in and of its own, but you are talking about navigating a scholarship process, which is a door opener for so many children, and especially children of immigrants and children from immigrant communities. So I just want to give you a sincere thank you for doing this, and thank you for hosting this webinar, because this really means a lot. You're really doing this to help a community of children that you have yet to meet, you have yet to know, and I just really want to give you a thank you at the very start of the webinar before I, let you lead. I'm really, really proud of you. So starting with Raj, then Sudipta, and then Farwa, can you quickly introduce yourselves? And then Raj has prepared slides, which we actually got approved by Questbridge. So I'm very happy to tell you that there was a lot of communication happening before this webinar to get a yes on these slides and on this whole entire presentation. So you can only imagine I drove them crazy. All right, so I'm really happy to share that with you. So I guess we'll take it from here. So go ahead. So we'll go Raj, Sudipta, Farwa, we'll switch. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so thank you for the great introduction, Francis. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Raj, currently a rising senior at MIT, studying data science and business analytics with a minor in Spanish. I was a Questbridge scholar in 2019 and 2020. So I was a national college match finalist in 2019, which is crazy to think almost 4 years ago. And I'm super grateful to Questbridge for the opportunity I have now. I didn't match to MIT, but I was admitted early action through the Questbridge application process. And so I would not be where I am right now without Questbridge and the support they've given. So, and some background, I used to tutor and work as a grader at Kweller throughout high school. So
Hi guys, so my name's Sudipta, and just like Roger's saying, I was also a Questbridge scholar, well, this year, and I was accepted into Dartmouth, but I wasn't accepted through the match process. I used my Questbridge application in the ED pool, and then that's how I got into Dartmouth. So again, also very grateful for Questbridge for what it's provided me. I came to Queller since I was a little sixth grader, so I've been here for a very, very long time. So my family is also just very grateful for, Frances and all of the opportunities that she's been able to provide us. And I'm also very grateful to be here today. And yeah, I can't wait to get started. Oh, and I went to Bronze Science.
Hi guys, thank you so much, Francis, for the introduction. Name is Farwa. I am a rising sophomore at Stanford University, and I am studying mathematics and economics, and I will probably be doing a master's as well, so very excited for that. I was a Questbridge match to Stanford, and I matched last year, so 2021, not last year, 2 years ago. So and yeah, so studying mathematics with econ, and super excited. I was at Kweller for my SAT prep over the summer. And yeah, I was here as a tutor this summer. So super, super excited.
Wow, thank you so much. And I'm so proud of you. Can you also add, just in terms of your first gen status, I just want to share what a big deal it is. So did your mom or dad go to MIT? Sudeep, did your parents go to Dartmouth Ivy League? Farwa, did your parents go to Stanford? Did they ever heard of Stanford? We just want to really understand like where you're coming from in terms of backgrounds.
Yeah, so
So
I
Raj,
can get started.
Sudipta, and then Sarah. Go ahead.
So, in terms of my background, my dad went to a 2-year associate college in India, but he never, when my parents immigrated here in the 90s, he never used his degree. And so he essentially worked off his merits with a high school education. And my parents own a small business in northern Brooklyn. They've worked there 7 days a week. They've been managing it since I was young, since my siblings were young. And their hard work ethic and grind and dedication was a really strong part of my motivation throughout school. And they set me up for higher opportunities, such as being able to apply to places like MIT and various other elite institutions. So a little bit about me.
My parents never stepped foot in an American university. They have college degrees from Bangladesh and India, but those don't even apply here. So, again, they came from a very uh hard background, also an immigrant. So, my parents and I, we all escaped religious persecution to get to where we are right now. And so, coming from an immigrant background, having parents who didn't attend university in America, it was an uphill battle, but it was a battle that was done through, like Francis said, tenacity and determination. And like watching my parents inspired me because it only inspired me to work harder and, to better myself for the future that I want to have. So, yeah.
My parents have never been to college ever in any country, doesn't matter where. My dad was a farmer back in Pakistan. So I come from a ethnic group called the Hazaras. We are descendants of Mongols and Persians, but we are predominantly in Afghanistan. So my grandparents had escaped ethnic persecution and religious persecution from Afghanistan and immigrated to Pakistan when my dad was 3 years old. They like walked across the border in the scorching heat. And then my parents, so that like the targeting sort of continued to Pakistan, and so my people were still being targeted in that country. So then my parents decided to immigrate to the United States in 2012. So I was born in Quetta, Pakistan, and I am also an immigrant. But yeah, we came back in 2012, December of that year. And yeah, my parents have never. My mom hasn't even graduated from high school. My dad was fortunate enough to go to high school, but that was in rural Pakistan. So no, it wasn't English medium or anything. It was, Urdu. So not a lot of education, but yeah, my dad was always a big advocate for education. My cousins who are still back home, they're still uneducated, which, compared to my family and where I am, it's very, very different. But yeah, my parents have always been a really big advocate for education, always pushed us. My dad used to work 3 jobs back to back, just so my siblings and I can go to college, to high school. My siblings were in the 11th grade when they came. So right now my sister's in medical school, my brother's in law school, and I am hopefully going to go to business school. So, really, really hard. It was very humbling to navigate life in New York City as new immigrants, definitely.
I'm really grateful and I'm so thankful that you're hosting this webinar. I also just want to relay that I myself am a child of immigrants. I'm very thankful that Queller Prep has grown, and the 3 of you have actually watched it grow so much, and many members right now in the webinar have watched it grow. But so my parents are from Moldova, which I looked up online. It is the poorest country in all of Eastern Europe. And my parents also they came to America as refugees. Actually, my parents worked jobs. They both did not have careers, and they were very grateful to be part of a union. My father and mother both eventually entered union jobs, and this was really their dream. They did everything for education and for me to have an education. So I'm very thankful I did later go to New York University, the Steinhardt School of Education. I went to Hofstra University for law school. I passed the bar exam. In my first try, I remember my dad was telling everyone, including the grocery store clerk, my daughter is a lawyer. And then I opened a tutoring business, which just confused everyone. But I really feel this is my calling from above. Oh, thank you. I do. I feel like this is really my calling to be able to have these moments where I can share the wisdom and the knowledge. And this is really my purpose in life. I'm very thankful. And I get to meet Raj and Subdeepta and Farwa and your families, and that's really an amazing thing. So I'm just so grateful and so touched, and I'm also just beyond words, just so thankful that you're able to host this type of webinar to pass the torch. And we have all come from very humble beginnings, and we're really looking to, you know, build and develop ourselves and be the best version we can possibly be and take advantage of the academic opportunities and the gifts that education gives. So without further ado, Raj prepared slides, and these slides have received the green light for the Kweller Prep webinar because I sent 100 emails and 100 emails worked. So I'm very happy to tell you that we have awesome slides. So everyone, thank you for joining, participating. And I'm really excited. All right, let's take it from here. And I just want to let you know, Farwa and Sudipta, they will be chiming in to supplement anything that Raj is saying with their experience. And Raj, again, he's prepared the slides so that we have a visual of how the application works. All right, so I'll let you take it from here. Okay, so you'll share the screen.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Wow, fancy.
Okay, so this is the slideshow that we're gonna showcase you guys today. That was green lighted by Questbridge themselves. Can everyone see my screen?
Yay, yes,
Are y'all
it looks
good?
amazing. Great photos.
Yeah, we had some great photographers. My photos from Kweller itself. So fantastic background. But so I'm Raj. Also have Sud and Farwa joining me today for today's webinar, where I'm going to go over generally what Questbridge is as a program, how it started, a little bit about the application process, specifically focusing in on the National College Match program that Questbridge offers, and then going to show you tidbits of my application from the 2019 cycle. So going to get started with generally what is Questbridge. For someone who, like myself, who had no idea kind of coming into my senior year about the plethora of opportunities that are there available for me, I knew about the Common App, I knew about the Coalition app, but Questbridge was a complete unique opportunity that I had no prior basis or understanding of. But I was informed about it by my guidance counselor. It was a nonprofit based out of California, with the mission of increasing the percentage of exceptional low-income high school students who want to have access to top-tier college and professional opportunities, but cannot frame or need alternate mechanisms to frame their backgrounds in the best way possible to showcase all that they've been through to these universities. And so there's various services and features that Questbridge offers. Very strong emphasis on college admission, because for higher level success, it's always important to education is the basis for everything. And having an education from an accredited four-year university is a prime kind of feature of social mobility for many immigrant families. And so one of the programs they offer is called the College Prep Scholarship, which is a program for high school juniors in the summer before their senior years. And it offers a scholarship to an on-campus summer program at a Questbridge college partner. It also provides college app help, essay feedback, access to workshops, networking with other college prep scholars, Questbridge National College Match alums. So that's the preliminary program, I like to think of it as, to the National College Match program, which itself is an independent college application process like the Common or the Coalition apps that's specifically for students in their senior year. They apply usually around the end of September. And there's also working on developing programs for graduate school and internship opportunities. And I think they also have an MBA program now, which is fantastic. So they're kind of constantly in expansion and building their network. But just to kind of showcase where Questbridge started, back in 1987, there was a 5-week summer enrichment program at Stanford Medical School for low-income youth in Palo Alto. It was the first program of its kind that really focused on providing opportunities specifically for low-income youth in the area to accredited professional programs at elite universities. And from there, it was called SMYSP. It expanded into SYESP, which was kind of the Questbridge Junior is what I like to think of it as. So expanding from Stanford Medical School into alternate fields like law, engineering, public policy, STEM, the sciences, natural sciences in particular, and generally kind of allowing access to various professional programs just at Stanford. And then this program in 1996 expanded to Harvard because of how successful it was within the Stanford and Palo Alto area. And then in 2000, Questbridge kind of slowly began to grow. They began to develop their reputation. And in 2000, they became an official nonprofit organization. And they expanded their outreach goal from just 20 to 40 students around the Bay Area to now several thousands of students, and providing these opportunities to students across the country. And in 2003, that's when the National College Match Program was officially initiated. Questbridge began partnering with colleges like Amherst, Stanford, Rice, Grinnell, Harvard, Wheaton, who were the original kind of college partners for Questbridge. And then in 2005, that's when the next kind of sequel for Questbridge came in. So the Quest for Excellence, which was further support and resources offered for high school juniors from unique backgrounds. And so this was kind of the prelude to the current College Prep Scholars Program. And now moving to the present day, they've grown their college partner network. They went from a staff of around 5 to 10 people to I think it's 100 to 200 full-time employees now. And every year, the number of students that hear and apply to Questbridge grows. And I know when I applied, there was around, I think, 48,000 people that applied. And I think it continually has developed every single year because of how nominal the program is and the opportunities that it provides. And so now the organization has become a widely known force throughout the college admission sphere, which is a huge reason behind its success. And how was it started? So it was a staff of 46 individuals. There are 10 board of directors, including 2 co-founders, Michael McCullough and Anna Mallory. And they developed teams of academic, business, and legal advisors. They had an advisory board on both the East and West Coast. And there were thousands of donors that helped contribute to their success, including Apple, Stanford Law School, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So really, really kind of well-known organizations and institutions and individuals investing into Questbridge. And now, when I was applying, there were only 48 partners, but they've expanded to 50 partners very recently, which I'm really glad about. And great schools ranging from places like MIT to Boston University to Middlebury, Tufts, Vanderbilt, Williams. So colleges across the spectrum, from elite Ivy League institutions to renowned liberal arts colleges to fantastic kind of urban centered schools like Boston University, Boston College, Emory. So you have a really wide plethora of options here with Questbridge, and a really wide number of institutions that specialize in very different fields and will essentially give you the opportunity to excel in any kind of discipline you're looking to excel in. And just generally, the National College Match Program, which is the cornerstone of Questbridge, it's a unique admission and scholarship process through which high-achieving low-income students have special access to these 50 partner colleges. And the most publicized part is the match process. That's kind of the first step in the National College Match Program, and it entails a full 4-year, all expenses covered scholarship to a college partner that finalists are matched to. So once finalists or once students apply to Questbridge, that's kind of the first step, and they're admitted into Questbridge. They're named National College Match finalists, and then from there, the preliminary stage within National College Match Program is the match process. And now you can rank up to 15 colleges. When I was a senior, you can only rank up to 12 colleges. So there's more opportunities. And basically going kind of down the rankings, Questbridge sends your application out, including all of your corresponding like letters of recommendations, transcripts, supplemental essays, etc., to these college match partners. And all the top college to accept your application and that's willing to provide you with a full 4-year scholarship is the one that you would get matched to. The important thing that I like to emphasize though is even though the match process is the most publicized part, it's not everything it's not everything about the National College Match Program. Even if you don't get matched, many Questbridge scholars still make it into top tier schools, still make it into Questbridge partner colleges during the early decision, early action, or regular decision rounds. However, you're not guaranteed a full scholarship, but usually a large portion of aid is provided up to your expected family contribution. So in general, the process, so like I said, usually the application is due in late September, but it's always best to get a start right now in the late stages of the summer. The application's free. It's fully accessible online on Questbridge's website. Anyone is able to start an application. And essentially through August and September, you prepare all of your corresponding materials. So again, you reach out to your teachers for recommendation letters. You prepare relevant pages about your school, your transcript, test scores. You write your essays, and you get everything collated and ready to submit by September 26th. And then by October 12th, you would rank up to 15 college partners. And this is specifically for the match program. And then by October 18th, you would get notified if you're if you're accepted into the program as a finalist. And then by November 1st, you would submit your match requirements. So for all the schools that you listed, out of those 15 that you ranked for your match process, you would need to submit requirements for each of those schools based off of what they would like to see from you. Usually it's supplemental essays, it's any kind of extra like financial forms, things of that sort. It's nothing super out of the sorts relative to what you submitted for the Questbridge application. And then by December 1st, that's match day. That's like the big day. That's when you find out if you've been matched to any of your 15 colleges. I think for me, I literally like my heart dropped when I first found out on October 18th that I was a finalist. You know, I was on the bus going back home from school, and me and my friends, you know, we'd all received our emails from Questbridge, you know, relaying our like application update, and it was super exciting, but also super nerve-wracking because at that point I had an idea of what I could accomplish with Questbridge and what the program was offering me, but up to that level, I still didn't realize what I was capable of. And, you know, getting into the program, I think I realized the scope of opportunities that were possible. And so October 18th was a huge day. December 1st, also another huge day. I found out personally that I wasn't matched on December 1st, which was, of course, a bummer. But, you know, one thing Questbridge loves to emphasize is that even if you're not matched, it's totally okay. And then what happens is you follow up for early decision, early action rounds. And so for early decision, of course, you're stating that you're willing to commit yourself to a particular school. And you're specifically willing to do that early in the process. Early action is a lot more flexible. I applied early decision to Columbia, and then I also applied early action to MIT. And so those were two of the schools I ranked within my 12 partners at the time. I didn't get into Columbia, and I actually got deferred for that process to the regular action process. And I was super kind of sad on when I found that out, of course. But when I found out I got into MIT as an early action applicant, I was thrilled. And, you know, that really was a formative part of my college admissions experience. And this is like a little bit about the timeline, and there's more information if you want to go into the regular decision side.
Can I just jump in really quickly? Raj, is that okay with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just as something about the match process, majority of the people who are finalists will not match, but Questbridge and its partner schools actually make it clear that more kids end up getting in through the regular Questbridge application and the early decision rounds than the match process. And I think Yale actually, I can quote it, they recently had 80 kids that they matched with, but they added 100 more Questbridge scholars in their early action and their regular decision rounds in comparison to the match process. So if you don't match, it's not something to like be worried about. There's always still opportunity using your Questbridge application.
I also wanted to make a note of the timeline. So you'll realize that you'll be notified as a finalist October 18, and you'll only have about a week and a half to actually submit all your applications and the supplemental essays for the schools that you are listing. So you also want to be mindful of how many schools you want to list. I know a lot of people like, and for me personally, I listed up to 11 schools at that time. So I did have like a lot of applications, a lot of essays to write within that week and a half. So it was very, very stressful. And you really want to make sure like the schools that you do list, you really, really want to do go there because it is binding. So if you do match, you would have to go. And so if there's a school that you might be like a little iffy on, I recommend not putting it on your list. And again, you have a week and a half. So you want to, choose between whether you want to apply to more schools or whether you want to submit a better application by spending more time doing a supplemental essay. So that's a very important thing to just distinguish. And also wanted to make a note that December 1st is like super early. Like you find out before everybody else whether you've matched to a school or not. So you are literally going to be like the first person to find out, which for me was like almost super crazy because I went into school the next day and like everybody was asking because our school is like very small. I went to Townsend Harris, by the way, so a very small school. So everybody was asking. I know the first person I went to was my guidance counselor since he was the one who helped me the most. But yeah, you find out before everybody else is because early decision or earlier action results come out December 15. So I just want to say like the adrenaline rush is just super exciting.
Yeah, I can definitely bump that. In terms of like the timeline, it's accelerated relative to early decision, early action processes. So that's why you can find out whether or not you're math and then reapply for ED and EA rounds because you find out earlier, which I think is also a huge advantage. So moving into some of like the considerations that Questbridge considers when determining students who are applicable to be finalists. So first off, academic criteria. Obviously, they want students who are excelling and taking the hardest classes or taking the most challenging classes available to them and maximizing the coursework in their schools. So ideally, you want to have A's, high 90s in your courses, be taking the most challenging courses that you can within a reasonable limit, usually honors, AP, IB level courses. In terms of class rank, it's okay if your school doesn't rank, but you generally want to be in the top 5 to 10% of your graduating class. It's not a huge factor, but just kind of for baseline metrics. For standardized test scores, usually around like a 1260 is the lower bound for SAT scores, and then a 26 on the ACT. So that's for the college prep scholar kind of group, but for the National College Match finalist group, I would say aim for in the 1300s at least, if not better. I think there's definitely been a deprioritization on standardized exams in the recent years, but I still think they're a very important baseline metric for places like Questbridge and also institutions to compare students from different kind of schools who were exposed to different amounts of rigor in different classes. And then evidence of strong writing ability, intellectual spark determination. So just strong kind of academic credentials outside of the classroom environment, determination to learn, succeed, and speak about where you came from. In terms of financial considerations, there's all sources of household income, first off, are taken into account. So salaries, wages, tips, business and farm income, rental income, interest and dividends, retirement, alimony, child support. So they're very extensive and thorough with how they assess your family's financial situation. Also, any assets that may be held by your family. So owning a home, owning a business or farm, external cash or savings accounts, investments, properties are also taken into account. And for students with divorced or separated parents, they have to report those assets separately. And particularly for their non-custodial parent. And usually in terms of like circumstances, obviously, students come from families and households with very different situations and frameworks. And there's Questbridge likes to take into account and makes it a priority to take into account the circumstances relevant to each individual's household. And so usually this includes a number of people that's supported by the household income, the number of students in college. So if you have any older, younger siblings, older siblings that are in college or younger siblings that are planning to go to college, or even older siblings that are planning to go to grad school, or in professional school are facing loans. That was my situation when I was applying to college. Very important to emphasize that. And then obviously other factors like eligibility for free or reduced price lunch, unemployment, any sort of external circumstances like being foster care. So again, very thorough. They look at everything. And in particular, you know, their baseline is for a family of four. Most finalists who are accepted, they would recommend for a family of four that the household income be around 65,000 for a family of four with minimal assets. So that's a baseline metric for in terms of like average income that I like to keep in mind and like to tell people. But obviously, that differs across the region. 65,000 will provide you with obviously different standards of living in New York versus if you're living like the middle of Iowa. So of course, that's not the only thing that's taken into account. So I think it's important to keep in mind, obviously income matters, but it's not everything. And then moving forward in terms of personal circumstances, Farwa, Sud, and I talked a little bit about our personal circumstances, what our families have been through. And many college prep scholars, many national college match finalists are among the first generation in their family to attend a four-year college. And I think that's what makes Questbridge such an important organization, that it gives these types of students the opportunity and the facility and the channel to apply to these colleges and showcase their unique backgrounds. And a large part of that is that, we're not exposed to, various tests. We're not exposed to all of the possible academic resources that might be feasible for students who might have had parents that grew up here or that went to college here, or that just have better understanding of the process than first generation low income students do. And so oftentimes, academics aren't everything. There's extracurricular activities, there's community service involvement, there's family responsibilities that also matter and are taken into account, and any sort of extracurriculars in school as well. So having accomplishments, leadership roles, being president of your debate club, being captain of your tennis team, helping, even being involved in your environmental club, your math team, etc. Any sorts of activities that your student is involved in are taken into account. Leadership roles are especially prioritized and emphasized. And then personal traits, of course, strength and character, motivation to succeed. And that kind of comes, I think, and is relayed through a lot of the essays. So the main parts of the application are, there's many similar components to the Common App. But I like to say the essays, are very unique, and you have to tailor your responses to the prompts. So you can't really reuse your personal statement. So even though there are aspects that might be similar between what they ask on the Common App and what they ask for Questbridge, the way that you frame your application, the way you frame your background is very specific for the Questbridge process. And in particular, usually you need to provide information, of course, on academics, activities, financial background, household, which you just went over a little bit. And then in terms of what you need to write and what you need to prepare, in terms of essay short answers, there's two large essays. There's a 500-word essay and an 800-word essay. And then there's two smaller short responses that I like to say are, I think, 200 to 250 words. And then there's like 7 short answers that are around like 35 words each. So really strong writing component. And then adding on to that, you also need obviously 2 recommendations from teachers. You need a school report from your high school counselor, school profile, which just gives a sense of the current status of your school, what classes are offered, whether students are ranked, what clubs, what activities, what extracurriculars are provided, where it's located, average SAT score, etc. And then also high school transcripts, any additional transcript if you're a transfer student or if you cross-enrolled, etc. And then, of course, any available standardized test scores, with an emphasis, of course, on SAT, ACT subject tests, IB, AP, or TOEFL test scores. And in terms of the breakdown, so you start off kind of going over the household background. So who you are, who your family is, who makes up your family, what do they do, what are your parents currently up to, what are your siblings, if you have any, currently up to, what's going on in your household, really. And then after that, you go into your academic status. So what classes are you taking? as a senior in high school, what's going on with standardized tests? How have you been doing on those? What standardized tests have you taken? What do you want to highlight? I would say quality over quantity here for the standardized test. Even if you've taken a lot, focus on the ones that you've done well on and that highlight unique aspects of your background. So if you've, taken like physics, chemistry, and world history, let's say you want to be your pre-med and you want to go to medical school eventually. It's okay. Let's say you don't do as well on your chemistry one as you do on your world history one. You do really well on your physics one. It's okay to put your physics and your world history SAT 2 scores and not put your chemistry one, because you don't need to tailor the test you put up to what you want to do, because that's not what matters. It is important though to have a variety of test scores if possible. So like for myself, I had math to physics and world history as my 3 kind of standardized tests. So like showcase like very different fields. And then obviously having your transcript, so how your student is done from freshman to junior year, and then extracurriculars, what they've been up to in terms of clubs, activities in school, outside of school, family responsibilities, community service, and then financial records, profiles, essentially asking you to fill in what's going on, how much your family's making, how that's broken down, everything we went over for the financial criteria. And then written responses. So these are all of the essays, short answers, short responses, and then school profile and teacher recommendations. And the only thing that's not shown to the student is the teacher recommendation component. So that is going to be submitted independently. You're going to basically ask the 2 teachers that you want to submit recommendations on your behalf to fill out and submit their letters independently of the application through a separate portal, and you will not be able to see those letters, just to ensure neutrality. But here I'm going to get started with like some tidbits and like screenshots from my application when I was applying in 2019. So very, very general information about who you are, your demographics, where you live, where'd you grow up, native languages spoken at home, if not English, how educated your parents were in terms of whether they graduated from 4-year college in the US, whether they didn't, questions about your ethnicity, and then more specifically, going into detail about what your parents do, who they are, and then what siblings, if you have any siblings, what they're up to. So at the time, I was raised in a 2-parent household, and my mom never graduated from college. My dad had a 2-year associate's degree from India. He never applied here, so I like to think they're both, survived off of their merits and off their street smarts. And so my mom, my parents, I kind of went over this, but they managed a small business in northern Brooklyn since the 1990s when they immigrated here. And so that was kind of what I highlighted, that, my dad was a manager, my mom was a salesperson. So they essentially worked together, and they had been working at the store for many years. And then I have 2 older sisters. At the time, one of them was, she had just graduated from college. She went to McCullough Honors at Baruch, and she was enrolling into law school. She was in her 2nd year of law school at the time, and was facing heavy loans from law school. My other sister, she had just graduated from medical school, and she was kind of doing rotations as a doctor. And there are a lot of fees and costs that come up with rotations. Obviously, you have to live in disparate areas and fend for yourself. So my parents were also supporting her. And so there were a lot of circumstances that came up for myself that I highlighted here within the household background. And I don't know if you guys want to add anything. No? Okay. So moving on, now going into the academic record. So senior year classes is showing over what classes I took. So I was taking 3 AP classes, so bio, Calc AB, and Spanish language. My school only offered 7 APs, and I took all of those 7 APs through the course of my high school career, because my high school is also really small. I went to HSAS, or the High School of American Studies, which is the lesser known specialized high school in the Bronx. We're kind of overshadowed by Bronx Science. But I like to think, we have more tight knit communities, no offense, Bud, but a little smaller, a little more tight knit. It was a great kind of environment. I think academically really fostered, gave me opportunities, even though it wasn't the largest school. It gave me opportunities, it gave me a really great network and really great guidance from my teachers. And in particular, even outside of classes, I would participate in summer programs. So I did CTY Johns Hopkins, where I took like a 3-week intensive college level mathematical logic course. I also did a neuroscience program at Muhlenberg College. So kind of mentioning not just what I did in my senior year of high school, but also programs and activities that I had been up to outside of the classroom environment. I think that's also really important to emphasize, that you're pursuing and you're academically curious and you're trying to pursue opportunities outside of what your school offers. And then also including some honors that I received, and then briefly some academic career interests. So at the time I really loved math and physics. So I was really interested in engineering, or stats, math, CS. And that's what I put down. Obviously they're not gonna, one important thing is, this is just like kind of a check to see what your student is interested in. It's not necessarily required that they pursue these fields at all. And from there, obviously adding in standardized test reports, was very lucky to do well on my SAT2 test, studied really hard for them. And then also my APs, of course I didn't get all 5, but that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect academically. That's one thing about Questbridge, right? There's other things going on in your life. So obviously you're not going to be the perfect student, but showcasing exactly what I can do academically and my potential. And then this is my transcript. Very self-explanatory. Extracurriculars, what I was up to, and my main extracurricular, I used to help my parents out at their small business in Brooklyn. Every week I went there for 4 hours. I'd help with bookkeeping and also inventory management. I used to play tennis. I've been playing tennis actually since I was 8, and I was co-captain of my school's team. And then I would volunteer at the local Hindu temple in Flushing, New York. And I also participated. I volunteered. I helped religious specialists there, and then I also got involved as kind of a youth mentor. And then I was a member of the Spanish Art Society in high school and Model UN team for my high school. And so a little bit about me, if you guys want to go over what you were up to.
Just to make it clear to you guys as well, I feel like a lot of you might be questioning, like, why does Questbridge only have like 5 places to put extracurriculars down? That's because there's also many other slots for you to put things down, like jobs. Wait, can you guys hear me? I think my Wi-Fi just cut out. Roger, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, but it was a little scratchy.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, fair enough.
So I was just re-emphasizing, a lot of you might be wondering why there's only like 5 places to put extracurricular slots down, but you'll also see that throughout the entire application, there's a lot of other things to put down, like jobs that a lot of you might have, right? They'll also have things like family responsibilities. The additional information that sums up through Questbridge actually ends up being a lot more information that you can provide than in comparison to the Common App or the Coalition app. So don't worry about the number of extracurriculars that you get to put down. But when it came down to my extracurriculars, I put down things that I did, like debate. I also worked at an ice cream shop. I was a student body president. And those are the things that like helped my background. And it summated to what I wanted to do later on in life in terms of like international relations or just something in like social work as a whole. Yeah, so that's my background.
For me, I sort of framed my application around the idea of education, because that's what I wrote my like main essay about, how I was a really big advocate for education from somebody who did come from a community that was sort of denied education for centuries. So I did a lot of volunteer work. And I did it for long periods of time. So I used to volunteer at a social service center near my house for 4 years, where I used to go with my parents when I first moved to the country. So it was sort of like I used to go there when I was new, and then I was giving back So it was sort of like a continuous relationship. And then I did a lot of volunteer work in school. So I started two tutoring clubs in school. So just like really, really big advocate for education. And I wanted to sort of like make it flow like that. And I just also did like cross country and track in school, which was something that just interested me, something that showed a different part of my personality. But I will recommend you guys to, if you guys do have a minimum wage job, like please mention it in your extracurriculars because it is so, so important. I did not know this until I went to college and I went to review my application, because now there's like, you can sign up to go see what your admissions officer said, what comments they put down on your application. So I signed up for that with a bunch of different friends. And it was kind of cool to see how many of them starred the fact that these people had a minimum wage job. Like some of my friends who did like a bunch of different really high like scholarships and internships, those weren't mentioned, but the fact that they had a minimum wage job at Subway was pointed out by the admissions officer, which I thought it was super funny, if anything. But yeah, if you guys do have a minimum wage job, please write it down, because it does show that you are responsible. You are somebody who's able to do a lot at the same time. Like you are not only somebody who's good at your academics, but you're also somebody who's super responsible and are able to, you're also just mature for your age, you know? And they really, really like that. So please, I recommend writing that down if you do have one.
Yeah, really great add-ons. I think it was definitely hard to frame everything within 5 extracurriculars, but they really try to get you to condense everything you're up to, kind of list what's most important to you and what you want to showcase. But obviously,
Oh, sorry, Raj. I just want to butt in and say some schools allow you to send in things like resumes or like additional information. So that's not something to be worried about.
yeah. So definitely lots of outlets to showcase everything you've been up to outside of the application, outside of this one section. Moving on, financial status. So putting in various facets from of like what's going on with your household. So in terms of wages, salaries, tips from the last fiscal year. So if you're applying in 2019, they'll want information from, I believe, 2018. And essentially, you'll also have to include, did your any sort of extra sources of income that your parents received outside of their regular jobs and day-to-day activities, and then assets that your family owns. So income and assets are kind of the two major components. Obviously, want to know that you're actually eligible for Questbridge in terms of what your family makes and what your family owns or has ownership to. And then now just moving into the short responses. So this is the written section, the first kind of component of the written section here. So the first short response, and these prompts are the same ones that they have in this year's application. So the first one was, tell us about one of your proudest achievements or moments of what it says about you. Really quickly, I just talked about a award that I received at my first Model UN conference. I was really nervous. Public speaking was something I used to dread, when I was younger. I was definitely, I used to be a lot more reserved as a kid, but doing Model UN really kind of helped get me out of my shell. So that's something I talked about. And then in terms of the second prompt, so if you could meet a character from a book or historical figure, who would it be? What would you ask them? I went to an American history school. It's called the High School of American Studies. Focused on American history, spent 3 years taking American history. And so I decided to talk about President Truman. And his profile just really kind of fascinated me. He was literally the common man, and he had no network connections, and he was able to work his way up. He kind of epitomized the idea of upward social mobility for me, so that was something I wanted to mention as well. For the purpose of time, I'll just keep going. Then I'll let you guys speak a little bit more about the longer essays. For short responses here, the last questions like, what's your favorite subject to study? Favorite books or movies? Favorite source of inspiration? How do you spend a typical weekend? What compliment are you most proud of receiving? How do you rejuvenate after a challenging experience? And then what would you contribute to your future college campus community? So generally questions, just trying to get to know you better, in more of an informal setting. What you're interested in, why, what do you like to do outside of your extracurriculars, outside of classes, outside of work, family responsibilities, etc. How do you spend time in a weekend? How do you rejuvenate? So really have the opportunity here to showcase, more fun sides of your personality, and more kind of niche experiences or niche things that you like to do in your spare time. And now this is really the bulk of the written responses. So the 800-word essay, which is like really the Questbridge quote unquote personal statement. So the same prompt that you have here is the same prompt that they offer in the 2023 application, the same one I had in 2019. So we're interested in learning more about the context in which you've grown up, formed your aspirations, and accomplished your successes. Please describe how the most influential factors and challenges in your life have shaped you into the person you are today. You have essentially 800 words to talk about generally who you are, what context have you grown up in, what inspired you to be the person you are today, what formed your aspirations, what formed your desire to succeed, and how have you accomplished your successes? How have you overcome those hardships that you have faced? And so everyone has a unique story. 800 words. It was really hard for me to condense everything 800 words. I had like 50 iterations of this, and that's why it was really important for me to start this early, because it always takes me a while to, especially when I was at this age, to write a really well condensed and concise response that still showcased my background to a level that I thought was informative enough for college admissions counselors. So I talked about various difficulties that I'd faced in terms of financial, personal, and also social difficulties that I'd faced kind of with my family, and also in school. I went to predominantly upper middle class white high school, so I definitely felt a bit ostracized in my background, and so it was definitely a bit of a process for me to feel like I fit in, and I talked a little bit about that. But this is just to showcase a few of my introductory paragraphs from my actual essay. So you guys want to chime in on what you
Guys,
guys
I
talked about?
just want to say something. These essays are kind of the part where you honestly have it's like the last part of your application that's the most multiple, right? At this point, you kind of have your test scores in, hopefully, if you're gonna submit test scores or things like that. At this point, you can't see your recommendation letters. Your grades are done in these classes junior year. It's not like you can go back and change that, right? These essays, they need to be tailored, curated in a way where it's like, I feel happy with them. But I also want to make it clear you can write these essays about anything. And I'd spoken about this in the previous webinar. My essays were so random and all over the place for the subjects that I'd spoken about. For some of the short responses, I had the most wacky ideas that I talked about. For one of the, Raj, for your proudest accomplishment, you wrote about MUN, right? Is that correct?
Right.
You wrote about Model UN. Guys, I wrote about being able to finally scoop an ice cream onto like an ice cream cone. So like ice cream onto an ice cream cone because I worked at like an ice cream shop and I just couldn't get like it into like a proper circle or a sphere. And so finally learning how to do that, like and then also learning how to like swirl soft serve, that was like my proudest accomplishment. For the 800-word essay, I had spoken about the religious persecution that my family and I went through. And so you see that it was like two extremes. One was like a very random topic that like very few people would think about, and another like spoke about my like family background and history. And I think that like there's so many different areas that you can pick apart at. And it's like at the same time it's very difficult because you're thinking about the fact that it's nearly 18 years or like 17 years of your life at this point, but any moment can matter if you know how to make it matter and make it sound like it matters to you.
Yeah, for me, I did a little bit of a different approach. I made mine sort of more cohesive and like sort of very similar. Like my 800-word essay sort of started off with my background, and I spoke about a specific event that had happened in my life, which had sort of triggered my immigration from Pakistan. So that's what I had talked about. And then I sort of ended it with the pursuit for higher education. And then also same thing with the 500-word essay, sort of same idea, same theme, very serious, more about my background. However, for the short responses with the 35 words, I made those super fun. So like really college applications really want to see different parts of your personality. They want to see what you really bring to the table. And so there was this like really serious and sort of intense part of my character. And there was also this very like happy, fun person that was, trying to showcase myself in the application. So for the 35 words, I like did a lot of fragments, not even complete sentences. Like for books and movies, I just wrote titles. So something very like different, not wordy, not that was not unrelated to school overall. Like I didn't talk about school or things that I did like my volunteer work or things that I've already mentioned in other parts of my application. I did not repeat those, only because I thought I needed to showcase as much of my personality as possible to the reader. So I give about like again very serious side, then a very fun side, and just not a lot of repetition.
Yeah, I think those are very good points of advice. Trying to showcase the plethora of interests and activities and the versatile individual that every student is. I think that's really important, showcasing, like making sure not to repeat points that you've already mentioned in other parts of your application and trying to be as informative as possible, because imagine someone who's reading thousands, hundreds to thousands of these applications. You want to make sure that they remember you, they remember your story, who you are. And so trying to think from the perspective of a college admissions counselor is oftentimes how I would write these responses. And then finally, the last part is the 500-word essay. So this is shorter than obviously a 100-word essay, and you have more options here in terms of what you want to write about. They're different prompts, slightly different prompts than what I had, but the prompt that I wrote my essay about gentrification, and in particular how I was born and raised in Queens, so how I've seen the borough change, and I've had friends, I've had personal experiences, and also heard experiences from many friends growing up of they've forced move outs and various other unfortunate circumstances in terms of how the housing situation has just become disastrous in the borough. And that was something I really wanted to write about, something I thought was really specific to my background growing up in Queens, and also just showcasing a bit about the diversity of personas of ethnicities that I've been exposed to here. So in this essay, I talked about gentrification, which is a negative concept, but I tried to relay it with the fact that I grew up in one of the world's most diverse urban areas. So kind of tying a positive with a negative, right? There's obviously this issue that you want to face, that you want to talk about, that you want to tackle, but also mentioning what inspires you to tackle this issue. What are the kind of silver linings behind, how you see optimism in the area or in the community, in this case in Queens, that inspired me in the future to want to give back and want to try to fix this. So that was a little bit about my essays. I don't know if you guys want to contribute here.
This is the only essay where I actually was kind of nerdy. Like out of all of my college applications, I used this 500-word essay to use option 1, and I used tell us about a concept, theory, or topic, and I spoke about the idea of infinity. But what I spoke about infinity was the fact that I always found it weird as a little kid that like infinity was in like a flipped over 8, and then I like went on an entire tangent for 500 words about that. And that was the only nerdy thing that I did throughout my entire college application process. And everything else was not at all related to academia whatsoever. And so, Raj and Faro and I had spoken about this already many times over and over, but think about it this way: you're multidimensional, and these college application officers, they want to know that you're a multidimensional person. They won't want to see that you're a person who's like just into one sort of topic or is just like a nerd by itself, right? What type of nerd are you? Think about it in a way where it's like they'd rather have more cool nerds, not to say that like, you guys aren't cool, but they would prefer cooler nerds than nerdier nerds, right? I don't know if anyone gets what I mean by that, right? You guys have to have, like, if you're, for example, I had a friend of mine who actually got accepted into MIT, and she got into MIT because of her love for like design and fashion, combined with engineering. It was like a very weird thing, and I never really fully understood it. But like, her MIT admissions officer had actually written in like a letter to her to her home about the fact that like it was the unique quality of her being so much into fashion that like convinced her and the rest of the admissions committee to like accept her. And it's like small niches about you that like make who you are very interesting to these officers that I think you should try to demonstrate towards them.
For mine, I picked number 3. So what aspect of your current community do you admire and wish to bring to your future college community? Again, I talked about how my community, although they lack a lot, they have this mentality of like supporting each other. Because if anything, the little happens in a different country, it sort of gets. We have like a community group chat on Facebook and WhatsApp that we do sort of share each other and connect with each other through. So I really admire that part of my community, and that's what I talked about. And I talked about how I was going to bring that into my college community and sort of be that like connecting force, and that force that sort of appreciates and is really proud of what my peers end up doing in the future. So yeah, same thing, very cohesive.
Yeah, so I think as Sud put, I think multidimensional is honestly the best way to conceptualize it. And every cooler nerd is one way to put it, but I think being a nerd doesn't just mean you're good at school. Like it means that there's more to kind of being a nerd, or like obviously being intelligent, is that you know how to handle various challenges, various difficulties when they're thrown at you. And the question is, how do you handle those? And what hardships are you facing as an individual that you want to highlight and that make you unique? So really great notes from both you guys. Thank you. And then we're going to kind of tune off here. So the school profile, very simple. What school do you go to? Every guidance counselor has like a few prepared copies of this. You can just submit it. And then obviously the letter's recommendation. I don't have a page here about this, but find teachers you can speak to, obviously your academic qualities, right? How you stand out, how you stood out in class, what made you stand out. And, generally courses where you've either had a teacher you really felt like you connected with, or a teacher that led an extracurricular activity you were really involved in. Someone who knows you, obviously from an academic perspective is one thing, but also an add-on from a personal lens is another thing. So when I was in high school, just to give a brief example, I unfortunately twisted my ankle during a gym class. I got crossed up by someone is the real story. That's not how I tell it, but just for you guys, I got crossed up in basketball gym class. Really sad, but I was in crutches for like 3 weeks. And I